You're not qualified for this position. The words sliced through the mahogany boardroom like a scalpel. David Williams sat motionless in his simple navy suit, hands folded as 12 pairs of eyes bore into him from around the polished conference table. Richard Sterling, interim CEO, leaned back in his leather chair. His Armani suit probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. The Rolex on his wrist caught the afternoon light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. "Clearly out of your depth," Richard continued, not bothering to hide his smirk. David's expression remained unchanged. No anger, no defensiveness, just calm observation, as if he were watching a chess game where only he could see the board. These black stories, these real-life stories of corporate discrimination, happen every day. But this one was different. Have you ever watched someone dismiss your entire existence in one sentence, not knowing they just signed their own corporate death warrant? The digital clock on the conference room wall read 2:13 p.m., 47 minutes until the shareholder vote that would determine Teknova Industries' next CEO. "Your resume is impressive on paper," Richard said, sliding the document across the table like it was contaminated. "Stanford MBA, Fortune 500 experience. But this company needs more than academic credentials." David picked up his resume without looking at it. His fingers, steady as a surgeon's, aligned the pages perfectly. No tremor, no rush. "What we need," Richard continued, his voice carrying that particular tone reserved for explaining obvious things to slow children, "is someone who understands our culture, our values." The other board members shifted in their seats. Patricia Chen, the CFO, studied her manicured nails. James Morrison, head of operations, scrolled through his phone. Only Dr. Sarah Hassan, the lone black board member, met David's eyes with something approaching sympathy. Richard stood, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow across the table. "This isn't about diversity quotas or feel-good initiatives. This is about capability." Unknown to everyone except a nervous-looking intern in the corner, Teknova's internal live stream was accidentally broadcasting the meeting to the company's LinkedIn page. The intern, barely 22, had clicked the wrong button during a routine documentation session. Her panicked attempts to shut it off had failed. The viewer count ticked steadily upward. 47 viewers, 73, 156. David's phone buzzed once. He glanced at it briefly, and for just a moment, the corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been a smile. 42 minutes, David said quietly, checking his watch. A Patek Philippe Nautilus, understated, elegant, worth more than most cars. Richard's eyes lingered on it, confused. "Excuse me?" Richard's confidence wavered slightly. "Nothing. Please continue." Richard's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being dismissed, especially not by candidates in job interviews. "As I was saying, leadership requires a certain background," David finished. "I understand completely." The live stream viewer count hit 234. Comments began appearing in the feed. "Did he just say what I think he said? Is this really happening? Teknova showing their true colors." Richard pulled out his phone, pretending to check messages while actually taking photos of David. "You have to understand our position. Our shareholders, our employees, they expect a certain level of compatibility." "Compatibility?" David repeated the word like he was tasting wine. "Interesting choice." Patricia Chen looked up from her nails. "What Richard means is that leadership transitions require cultural alignment." "Of course." David opened his leather portfolio, Italian leather, precisely organized, and withdrew a fountain pen. Mont Blanc. He began taking notes in fluid script. The gesture seemed to unnerve Richard. "What are you writing?" "Observations." "Observations about what?" David's pen never paused. "Cultural alignment, as Ms. Chen put it." The intern's laptop showed 400 viewers now. Her supervisor had noticed the stream but couldn't access the admin controls. The comments were flowing faster. "This is discrimination in real time." "Someone recording this?" David Williams handling this like a boss. Richard's face flushed. I don't appreciate your tone. I haven't used a tone. I've barely spoken. Exactly. This is a conversation, not an interrogation. David set down his pen and looked directly at Richard for the first time. You're absolutely right. This should be a conversation. Would you like me to ask you some questions? Something in David's voice made Richard step back. That's not how this works. How does it work? The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of Manhattan traffic 30 floors below. The live stream had reached 600 viewers. Richard recovered his composure, straightening his tie. We ask the questions. You provide answers that demonstrate you're fit for our organization. Your organization? That's right. David's phone buzzed again. This time his smile was unmistakable. He typed a quick response, his fingers moving with practiced efficiency. 38 minutes, he murmured. Richard's confusion was morphing into irritation. Are you timing this interview? I'm timing several things. Such as? David closed his portfolio but kept his hands resting on it. Market close is at 4 p.m. Your emergency board meeting is scheduled for 3:15. The SEC typically releases investigation announcements on Wednesdays after 3 p.m. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I'm not sure what you're implying, Patricia said carefully. I'm not implying anything. I'm simply noting that timing matters in business. Richard moved closer to David's chair. I think this interview is over. You're probably right. But David didn't stand. Instead, he looked at Dr. Hassan. Doctor, you've been quiet. Any questions about my qualifications? Dr. Hassan glanced nervously between David and Richard. Your background seems solid. Thank you. I appreciate honest assessment. Richard's face was now fully red. Security can escort you out if needed. That won't be necessary. David stood slowly, his movements deliberate. Though I should mention 35 minutes now that I have a few more items to discuss. He reached for his portfolio's zipper. The interview is finished, Richard declared. The interview, yes. David's fingers paused on the zipper. But we haven't started the real conversation yet. The live stream viewer count hit 1,200. Comments were now coming in multiple languages, and several tech journalists had joined the feed. Richard pressed the security button under the conference table. Within 60 seconds, 2 guards appeared at the glass doors, Marcus Webb and Tony Rodriguez, both veterans who'd worked Technova security for over 5 years. Gentlemen, Richard announced, please escort Mr. Williams from the premises. The guards entered hesitantly. Marcus had seen dozens of executive meetings go sideways, but something felt different about this one. The man in the Navy suit sat perfectly still, almost meditative. David looked up at the guards with genuine warmth. Good afternoon, Marcus. Tony. Both men froze. Executives never knew their names. Sir, Marcus replied uncertainly. How's your daughter's soccer season going? Sarah, right? Midfielder for the Eagles? Marcus's eyes widened. How do you... I sponsor youth sports leagues in Queens. Sarah's quite talented. Tony shifted uncomfortably. Sir, we've been asked to... I understand completely. You're doing your jobs. David stood gracefully. Though I should mention that 32 minutes remain. The live stream had exploded. 2,847 viewers and climbing. The comments section was a waterfall of outrage, support, and disbelief. This is insane. Someone call the news. David Williams is handling this perfectly. I'm recording everything. Technova stock is going to tank. Dr. Hassan pulled out her phone. Richard, I think we should... Put that away, Richard snapped. This is a private meeting. Actually, the intern squeaked from the corner, her voice barely audible. It's being live streamed. I can't turn it off. The blood drained from Richard's face. What? LinkedIn auto stream activated. We have... She checked her laptop. Almost 3,000 viewers. Patricia Chen lunged for the intern's computer. Shut it down, now. I can't. The admin controls are locked. It has to reset them remotely. Richard grabbed his phone, dialing frantically. Get me Rodriguez in IT. Emergency. The guards looked between David and Richard, unsure how to proceed. Corporate security training didn't cover live-streamed executive meltdowns. David reached into his jacket, slowly, deliberately, and withdrew his boarding pass. First class, American Airlines, JFK to San Francisco, departing at 6:30 p.m. 30 minutes, he said calmly. Stop with the countdown, Richard shouted, his composure completely shattered. 29 minutes, 57 seconds. More board members pulled out phones, some trying to call a T, others frantically texting. The live stream viewer count hit 4,200. James Morrison stood up. This is ridiculous. David, just leave. We'll be in touch. I don't think we will, David replied. What's that supposed to mean? David's phone buzzed. He read the message and nodded slightly. It means the market has noticed. What market? Patricia demanded. Technova's trading volume spiked 17% in the last 4 minutes. Someone's paying attention. Dr. Hassan was scrolling through Twitter. Oh, God. Technova discrimination is trending. That's impossible, Richard said. We just started this meeting. Social media moves fast, David observed, especially when tech journalists are watching. The intern's laptop showed multiple news outlets had joined the live stream. TechCrunch, The Verge, Bloomberg Technology. The viewer count was approaching 6,000. Marcus, the security guard, stepped closer to David. Sir, I don't want to do this, but... You have a job to protect, David said kindly. I respect that. But consider this. What happens to your job if this company faces federal investigation? Federal investigation, Tony echoed. Richard moved between David and the guards. Don't listen to him, he's bluffing. Am I? David checked his watch again. 27 minutes until the SEC's afternoon announcement cycle. You keep mentioning the SEC, Patricia said, her voice tight. Why? Because they're remarkably punctual. Richard grabbed David's visitor badge from the table. Surrender this, now. David smiled, the first genuine smile since entering the room. I haven't needed a visitor badge here for 18 months. The statement hit the room like a physical blow. What? Dr. Hassan whispered. 18 months, David repeated. That's how long I've been documenting this company's practices. The live stream exploded with comments. Viewer count, 7,800 and climbing. Technova was now trending alongside #corporate discrimination and #David Williams. Richard's hands shook as he tried to process this. You don't work here. No, but I own 23% of it. The words hung in the air like smoke. Every phone in the room simultaneously buzzed with notifications. Patricia frantically opened her Bloomberg terminal. That's impossible. Our shareholder records... Shell corporations, David said simply. Perfectly legal. Hathaway Capital, Meridian Holdings, Cornerstone Investments, all mine. James Morrison's face went white. You're the anonymous investor who's been buying shares. Not anonymous, just patient. The security guards stepped back without being asked. This was beyond their pay grade. Richard's voice cracked. You can't infiltrate a company. I didn't infiltrate anything. I invested. Then I watched. Dr. Hassan was typing rapidly on her phone. Richard, we need to call legal. Now. 24 minutes, David said. Stop with the fucking countdown, Richard screamed. The outburst was caught perfectly on the live stream. 8,500 viewers watched Richard Sterling, interim CEO of a Fortune 500 company, completely lose control. David's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID. Washington, D.C. Excuse me, he said politely. I need to take this. You're not taking any calls, Richard declared. David answered anyway. Hello, Agent Morrison. Agent Morrison, FBI. The room fell silent except for David's side of the conversation. Yes, I'm still in the meeting. No, they haven't seen the documents yet. 23 minutes. Right on schedule. He hung up. Richard was now visibly sweating. Who was that? A friend from the bureau. They wanted to confirm timing. Patricia Chen grabbed her purse. I'm leaving. I wouldn't, David said gently. Not yet. You can't keep us here. I'm not keeping anyone anywhere. But leaving now might look like consciousness of guilt. Guilt of what? James demanded. David reached for his portfolio's zipper. Securities fraud, wire fraud, civil rights violations. Should I continue? The live stream viewer count hit 10,000. Major news networks were now broadcasting clips. Teknova's stock price had dropped 12% in the last 20 minutes. Richard lunged forward, trying to grab David's portfolio. You can't! Marcus, the security guard, gently but firmly blocked Richard's path. Sir, please step back. You work for me! Richard shouted. Marcus looked at Tony, then back at Richard. Actually, sir, we work for Teknova. And if Mr. Williams owns 23%... The implication hung in the air. David's phone buzzed again. Text message. He read it and nodded. 21 minutes, he announced. Though I should mention, the afternoon just got more interesting. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, they could see news vans pulling up to the building's entrance 30 floors below. How? Patricia whispered. Social media, David replied. Amazing how fast information travels these days. The live stream had become a phenomenon. 12,000 viewers. Hashtags trending worldwide. And David Williams, the man they'd tried to dismiss as unqualified, sat at the center of it all with the calm of someone who'd been planning this moment for a very long time. David's fingers moved to the portfolio's zipper with surgical precision. The sound cut through the room's chaos like a blade. 1,800 people were now watching the live stream. News anchors had begun reporting the story in real time. Teknova's stock had dropped another 8%. 19 minutes, David said quietly. He opened the portfolio and withdrew a thick document bound in federal blue covers. The header was visible to everyone. United States Securities and Exchange Commission, complaint for violations of federal securities laws. Richard's face went from red to ashen in seconds. What is that? Dr. Hassan whispered. David placed the document on the conference table with the care of someone handling evidence. Formal complaint against Teknova Industries and several named individuals for securities fraud, market manipulation, and civil rights violations. Patricia Chen leaned forward, squinting at the text. Named individuals? David's finger traced down the page to a highlighted section. Richard Sterling, Chief Executive Officer. Patricia Chen, Chief Financial Officer. James Morrison, Operations Director. The silence that followed was deafening. James Morrison's voice cracked. This has to be fake. SEC case number 2024 CV 18847, David read aloud. Filed this morning at 9:47 a.m. Eastern Time. You can verify it on the SEC's public database. Patricia was already typing frantically on her phone. Her face confirmed what David had said. Impossible, Richard breathed. David withdrew a second document. This one bore the FBI seal. Parallel criminal investigation. Wire fraud, conspiracy, violation of civil rights under federal statute 18 U.S.C. 241. The live stream viewer count hit 15,000. Comments were streaming too fast to read, but the tone was clear. Shock, outrage, and growing support for David. How long? Dr. Hassan asked, her voice barely audible. How long what? How long have you been investigating us? David checked his watch. 18 months, 2 weeks, 4 days. Richard stumbled backward into his chair. You've been planning this. Planning implies a predetermined outcome. I was hoping it wouldn't come to this. What do you mean? David stood and walked to the window overlooking Manhattan. The news vans below had multiplied. 3 major networks plus local stations. 18 months ago, I was hired by Blackstone Capital Partners, Technova's largest institutional investor. They'd noticed certain irregularities in your financial reporting. Patricia's hands were shaking. What irregularities? Revenue recognition anomalies, suspicious timing of executive stock sales, unusual patterns in your diversity hiring data. David returned to the table and withdrew a third document. This one was thick, over 200 pages. My preliminary report to Blackstone. It recommended a deeper investigation. James Morrison leaned forward. You're some kind of, corporate spy. Forensic accountant. Former federal prosecutor. I specialize in white-collar investigations. The revelation hit the room like a physical blow. The man they'd been dismissing as unqualified was actually hunting them. Richard's voice was barely a whisper. What did you find? David opened to a tabbed section. $47.2 million in embezzled funds across 14 months. Artificial inflation of quarterly revenues by 34%. Systematic exclusion of qualified minority candidates from executive positions. He turned the page. Wire transfers to offshore accounts. Stock sales timed 48 hours before negative earnings announcements. Bribes to recruitment firms to suppress diverse candidate pools. Dr. Hassan covered her face with her hands. Oh my God. The pattern was sophisticated, David continued, but sloppy in execution, digital footprints everywhere. Patricia stood abruptly. I need to call my lawyer. I wouldn't. Why not? David's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled. Because your lawyer, Martin Goldstein, is also under investigation. Attorney-client privilege doesn't cover criminal conspiracy. The live stream had reached 18,000 viewers. Hashtag Technova Exposed was trending globally. Stock price down 23% and falling. Richard tried to grab the documents. You can't just... Marcus, the security guard, stepped between them again. Sir, please. They work for me, Richard screamed. Marcus looked at David. Actually, sir, who do we work for? David didn't hesitate. As of this morning, when Blackstone Capital exercised their option to purchase additional shares, they control 31% of Technova. Combined with my 23%, that's 54%. The math hit everyone simultaneously. You have controlling interest, Dr. Hassan whispered. We have controlling interest. Blackstone and I are aligned. James Morrison's voice was hollow. You orchestrated a hostile takeover. I orchestrated justice. The takeover was just efficient corporate governance. David's phone rang again. This time he put it on speaker. David, it's Senator Williams. Senator Williams. As in Elizabeth Williams, chair of the Senate Banking Committee. Hello, Aunt Elizabeth. The room went dead silent. The FBI is ready to proceed. Are you? 17 minutes until market close. Perfect timing. Good. The press conference is scheduled for 4:15. That should give the markets time to digest the news. Richard's voice cracked. Press conference? Senator Williams continued through the phone. The Attorney General will announce the criminal charges. SEC will detail the civil violations. And the Senate Banking Committee will launch formal hearings on systemic discrimination in corporate America. David looked directly at Richard. Technova gets to be the poster child for everything wrong with corporate culture. Unless? Patricia asked desperately. Unless what? There has to be an unless. Some way to... David closed the portfolio. The investigation is complete. The evidence is documented. The charges are filed. He paused, studying their faces. But the scope of prosecution? That could be negotiated. Hope flickered in Richard's eyes. What do you want? I want what I came here for 18 months ago. A fair, equitable, profitable company. How? David pulled out his phone and ended the call with his aunt. Immediate resignations from all named defendants, full cooperation with federal investigators, complete restitution of stolen funds. And then? And then we rebuild this company the right way. Dr. Hassan looked up. We? I'll be serving as interim CEO while Blackstone and the board conduct a proper search for permanent leadership. The live stream viewer count had reached 22,000. Every major business news outlet was now covering the story. Technova's stock had dropped 31%, wiping out over $800 million in market value. Richard's hands trembled as he reached for his phone. I need to call. The only call you need to make is to your criminal defense attorney, David said quietly. Someone independent. Someone clean. Patricia was crying now. We're ruined. You're accountable. There's a difference. James Morrison stood on shaky legs. If we cooperate, what happens to us? David consulted his notes. Federal sentencing guidelines for first-time financial crimes with cooperation credit typically result in 18 to 36 months minimum security, plus restitution and civil penalties. And if we don't cooperate? 15 to 20 years federal maximum security, asset forfeiture, criminal conspiracy charges that could implicate your families. The choice was clear. Richard's voice was barely audible. What do you need from us? David withdrew a final document from his portfolio. Resignation letters, effective immediately. Asset disclosure forms, cooperation agreements with federal prosecutors. He placed 3 pens on the table. 15 minutes until market close. The timing is entirely up to you. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, they could see news helicopters circling the building. The story had exploded beyond corporate drama into a national conversation about power, privilege, and accountability. The live stream chat was moving too fast to follow, but the sentiment was clear. David Williams had just pulled off the most spectacular corporate takedown in recent memory. And he'd done it live, with 22,000 people watching. Richard Sterling, the man who'd dismissed David as unqualified, reached for a pen with a hand that shook like autumn leaves. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The unqualified candidate had just dismantled their entire corporate structure with surgical precision. Every dismissive comment, every coded insult, every assumption about his capabilities had been carefully documented evidence. David watched Richard's trembling hand hover over the resignation letter. Take your time. This decision will define the rest of your life. The live stream viewers had reached 25,000. History was being written in real time, broadcast to the world. Where do I sign? Richard's signature looked like the scrawl of a broken man. Patricia followed, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. James Morrison signed last, his hand steady, but his face gray with resignation. David collected the documents methodically, placing each in a separate folder. The live stream had reached 28,000 viewers. Outside, news helicopters circled like vultures. 12 minutes until market close, David announced. Time for the real board meeting. He pressed a button on the conference table's integrated phone system. Jennifer, please send them up, Dr. Hassan looked confused. Send who up? The glass doors opened and 6 people entered. David stood to greet them, the first time he'd shown deference to anyone all afternoon. Board members, meet the new leadership team. The first person through the door was Maria Santos, former CEO of Global Dynamics. Her reputation for turning around failing companies was legendary. Forbes had called her the corporate surgeon. Behind her walked Dr. Michael Chen, Patricia's own brother and a respected forensic accountant. His presence sent another shock through Patricia's system. Michael, Patricia whispered. What are you doing here? Dr. Chen's expression was grim. What I should have done 18 months ago when you first asked me to massage the quarterly numbers. The third person was Judge Rebecca Thompson, recently retired from the Federal District Court for the Southern District of New York. Her specialty had been white-collar crime. David gestured to the newcomers. Maria will serve as interim CEO, Dr. Chen will oversee financial reconstruction. Judge Thompson will chair our new Ethics Compliance Board. The remaining three were younger, a diverse group of executives David had been recruiting for months. But we just resigned, Richard protested weakly. Doesn't the board need to vote? Judge Thompson smiled coldly. The board did vote. Emergency session this morning. Unanimous approval of the new leadership structure. That's impossible. We are the board. You were the board, Maria Santos corrected. Blackstone Capital's majority position triggered automatic board restructuring under Teknova's own bylaws. Dr. Hassan pulled out her phone, frantically searching corporate documents. Article 7, Section 3, she read aloud. In the event of majority shareholder change, emergency board reconstitution may occur within 24 hours. David nodded. Your own lawyers wrote those bylaws in 2019, ironically, to prevent hostile takeovers. The live stream chat was exploding with legal experts weighing in. Business schools would teach this case for decades. A perfect execution of corporate governance rules against the very people who created them. Maria Santos moved to the head of the table with the authority of someone accustomed to command. Our first order of business is damage control. Teknova's stock has lost 38% of its value in the last hour. She opened her tablet, displaying real-time financial data. Market cap has dropped from $12.4 billion to $7.7 billion. That's $4.7 billion in shareholder value destroyed. Patricia's brother, Dr. Chen, laid out spreadsheets across the conference table. The embezzlement was systematic but contained. $47.2 million stolen across 14 months. Full restitution is possible if we act quickly. How? Dr. Hassan asked. She was the only original board member still seated, having signed no resignation letter. Dr. Chen pointed to highlighted figures. Frozen offshore accounts total $32.8 million. Richard's seized assets, homes, cars, art collection, approximately $18.6 million. Patricia's hidden investments, another $12.1 million. That's over $60 million, Dr. Hassan calculated. Exactly. Full restitution, plus penalties and interest. Judge Thompson opened her briefcase, withdrawing court documents. Federal asset seizure orders were executed simultaneously across 3 states this morning. Swiss banking authorities froze accounts at Credit Suisse and UBS. Richard's face went white. My family's money. Your family's legitimate money remains untouched, Judge Thompson said firmly. Only assets purchased with stolen funds are subject to forfeiture. The live stream viewer count hit 32,000. Teknova Justice was trending in 17 countries. Stock traders were calling it the fastest corporate justice case in Wall Street history. David's phone buzzed with a text from his aunt. AG press conference in 8 minutes. Are you ready? He typed back, ahead of schedule. Maria Santos addressed the room with CEO authority. Teknova will survive this scandal, but only with complete transparency and radical reform. She clicked to her next slide. Immediate changes. All executive hiring will be conducted by independent third-party firms. Diversity quotas will be legally mandated. 40% women, 30% underrepresented minorities in leadership positions within 18 months. That's aggressive, Dr. Hassan observed. That's necessary, David replied. Half measures created this crisis. Dr. Chen added, financial controls will be implemented immediately. All transactions over $50,000 require dual approval. Monthly audits by independent firms. Real-time transparency reporting to shareholders. Judge Thompson continued the presentation. Ethics hotline managed by external investigators. Anonymous reporting with federal whistleblower protections. Quarterly training mandatory for all employees, including executives. The former executives sat in stunned silence, watching their company being rebuilt in real time. What about us? James Morrison asked quietly. Judge Thompson consulted her notes. Federal prosecutors are prepared to recommend minimum sentences in exchange for full cooperation. You'll testify in broader industry investigations. Broader investigations? Patricia echoed. David smiled grimly. Technova isn't unique. We've identified similar patterns at 14 other Fortune 500 companies. This is just the beginning. The live stream chat erupted. Journalists were already reaching out to other corporations, asking for comment. Legal experts predicted a wave of investigations across Silicon Valley. Maria Santos clicked to her final slide. Financial projections. With proper leadership and restored investor confidence, Technova can return to profitability within 2 quarters. How can you be sure, Doctor? Hassan asked. Because the fundamentals are sound. The technology is innovative. The workforce is talented. The only problem was leadership. She looked directly at the former executives. Problems we've just solved. David checked his watch. 6 minutes until market close. 4 minutes until the Attorney General's announcement. Through the windows, they could see news crews setting up in the plaza below. The story had moved beyond corporate drama into a national conversation about accountability and reform. The live stream had become a phenomenon. 35,000 viewers watching corporate history unfold in real time. Law professors were already assigning the case to students. Business journalists were writing books. Richard Sterling, who'd started this meeting by dismissing David as unqualified, now sat broken and defeated. The man he'd tried to humiliate had systematically dismantled his entire life's work. "Any final questions?" Maria Santos asked. Richard's voice was barely a whisper. "How long have you been planning this?" David considered the question carefully. "Planning suggests premeditation. I was hoping for cooperation." "When did you know we wouldn't cooperate?" "About 30 seconds into this meeting, when you questioned my qualifications." The irony was perfect. Richard's own arrogance had sealed his fate. David's phone rang. Attorney General's office. "It's time," he announced. As if on cue, every television in the building switched to breaking news coverage. The Attorney General stepped up to a podium in Washington, D.C., flanked by FBI and SEC officials. "Good afternoon. Today, federal prosecutors filed criminal charges against executives of Technova Industries for securities fraud, embezzlement, and civil rights violations." The words echoed through the conference room as 37,000 people watched the live stream, witnessing the exact moment when corporate accountability became more than just a slogan. It became reality. The Attorney General's voice cut through the silence like a verdict. 3 executives of Technova Industries were arrested this afternoon on federal charges of wire fraud, securities manipulation, and conspiracy to violate civil rights. Every eye in the room turned to Richard, Patricia, and James. The reality hit them like a physical blow. This wasn't a negotiation anymore. It was a conviction. Dr. Hassan stared at her former colleagues in horror. "Arrested?" David checked his phone. "FBI agents are in the lobby. They'll execute the warrants after market close." "You said cooperation would help," Richard protested desperately. "It will. Cooperation means 18 to 36 months instead of 15 to 20 years. But consequences were always inevitable." The live stream chat exploded as viewers realized they were watching federal criminals in real time. 39,000 people witnessed 3 Fortune 500 executives learning their fate. Maria Santos stood at the head of the table with quiet authority. "Technova will cooperate fully with federal investigators. We will also implement immediate systemic changes." She gestured to Dr. Chen, who distributed tablets to everyone in the room. "The tech equity application launches Monday morning. Real-time tracking of hiring demographics, promotion rates, and pay equity across all departments." Judge Thompson added, "Anonymous reporting system with direct FBI hotline. Any discrimination complaint triggers automatic independent investigation within 48 hours." "What about current employees, Doctor?" Hassan asked. "Complete review of all personnel decisions from the last 3 years," Maria replied. Anyone passed over for promotion due to bias will receive immediate consideration and back pay where appropriate. David pulled up financial projections on the main screen. We estimate 67 qualified candidates were rejected for discriminatory reasons. Settling those cases proactively will cost approximately $12 million. Plus the reputational benefit of taking responsibility, Judge Thompson noted. The live stream viewer count hit 42,000. News anchors were calling it the fastest corporate accountability case in modern history. Patricia wiped tears from her face. What happens to our families? Dr. Chen, her own brother, answered with professional coldness. Assets purchased with stolen funds are forfeit. Everything else remains untouched. Your children's college funds, your parents' retirement accounts, all protected. The houses? The Hamptons house, yes. The downtown condo, yes. Your primary residence in Westchester was purchased before the embezzlement began. That stays in the family. James Morrison looked broken. How do we explain this to our kids? David's expression softened slightly. The same way you should have been explaining privilege and responsibility all along. With honesty. These touching stories, these real-life stories of families torn apart by greed, played out while the world watched. But for every privileged family destroyed, dozens of qualified candidates would finally get their chance. Maria Santos clicked to the next slide. Executive compensation will be restructured. CEO salary capped at 50 times the median worker's pay. All bonuses tied to diversity metrics, not just financial performance. The board approved this? Dr. Hassan asked. Unanimously. Turns out investors prefer sustainable growth over short-term manipulation. Judge Thompson opened her briefcase again. We've also established the Technova Justice Fund, $5 million annually for legal aid, helping employees at other companies file discrimination complaints. The irony was perfect. Technova's stolen money would fund justice across the industry. David's phone buzzed with updates from Washington. Senator Williams reports 17 other companies have contacted the FBI voluntarily, requesting compliance reviews. 17, Doctor? Hassan gasped. The smart ones are getting ahead of the investigation. Better to self-report than get caught later. The live stream had become appointment viewing for business leaders nationwide. Law firms were calling emergency meetings. HR departments were frantically reviewing policies. Richard Sterling sat motionless, staring at his hands. I built this company from nothing. No, David corrected firmly. You exploited this company for everything. We created jobs. We innovated. You stole $47 million and systematically excluded qualified people based on race and gender. Maria Santos cut him off. Innovation doesn't excuse criminality. The conference room fell silent except for the distant sound of sirens. FBI vehicles were arriving. Dr. Hassan looked around the room at the wreckage of careers, the birth of reforms, the weight of justice. What happens now? David gathered his documents with the same methodical precision he'd shown all afternoon. Now, Technova becomes what it should have been all along. A company that succeeds because of its values, not despite them. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, they could see FBI agents entering the building. The live stream viewer count reached 45,000 as people shared the link across social media platforms. Maria Santos closed her presentation. The era of consequence-free corporate discrimination ends today. Technova will be the model for how companies rebuild after systemic failure. Judge Thompson added, and how justice, properly applied, creates better businesses. David stood, straightening his simple navy suit. 18 months of investigation, $47 million in theft, 3 executives facing federal prison, and 1 company getting a second chance to do things right. The math of justice was finally balanced. 6 months later, David Williams stood in the same conference room where it all began. The mahogany table remained, but everything else had changed. Technova's stock had not only recovered, but reached record highs. trading at $147 per share, up from the $89 low during the crisis. The company's commitment to transparency and equity had attracted top talent from across the industry. Fortune magazine's cover story called it the most dramatic corporate turnaround in modern history. Maria Santos had been named permanent CEO after a unanimous board vote. Under her leadership, Teknova's revenue had grown 23% quarter-over-quarter. Dr. Chen's financial reforms had become the gold standard for corporate accountability, with 18 Fortune 500 companies adopting identical systems. Judge Thompson's ethics framework was being implemented by over 200 corporations worldwide. Richard Sterling was serving 22 months at minimum security federal prison in Pennsylvania. His cooperation had helped prosecutors build cases against executives at 12 other corporations, resulting in over $200 million in additional recoveries. Patricia Chen was at a facility in Connecticut, teaching financial literacy to fellow inmates as part of her restitution program. James Morrison had been sentenced to 18 months and was scheduled for release in 6 weeks. The ripple effects had been extraordinary. Congress passed the Corporate Accountability and Transparency Act with bipartisan support, the first major corporate governance legislation in 20 years. Business schools redesigned their curricula around ethical leadership, with Harvard creating the Teknova case study as a mandatory first-year course. The case was now required reading for MBA students at 43 universities worldwide. David's phone buzzed with a familiar notification, the Tech Equity app he'd helped design. Teknova's diversity metrics were now public in real time. 47% women in leadership, 38% underrepresented minorities in executive positions, and a 31% increase in promotion rates for previously overlooked employees. The industry average was still only 23% and 12% respectively. But the real victory wasn't in numbers. It was in the life stories now being written differently. Keisha Washington, a brilliant software engineer who'd been passed over for promotion 3 times under the old regime, was now Teknova's youngest VP at age 29. Her innovative AI algorithms had generated $47 million in new revenue. Miguel Rodriguez, whose resume had been discarded because of his surname, led the company's fastest-growing division and had just been featured on the cover of Tech Leadership magazine. Sarah Chen, Dr. Hassan's former assistant, had been promoted to Director of Inclusion after revealing she'd been documenting discriminatory practices for 2 years. Her detailed records had provided crucial evidence in the federal investigation. These black stories, these touching stories of redemption and opportunity, proved that justice wasn't just about punishment, it was about possibility. The live stream that had broadcast David's confrontation with Richard Sterling had been viewed over 47 million times across all platforms. It sparked a movement called #CorporateAccountability that held companies responsible across industries, from tech to finance to entertainment. David's work wasn't finished. As head of the newly created Institute for Corporate Justice, he consulted with companies proactively addressing systemic bias. His team had conducted voluntary audits at 63 corporations, preventing potential discrimination before it occurred. Prevention, he'd learned, was more powerful than prosecution. His phone rang, the distinctive tone he'd assigned to urgent cases. Another Fortune 500 CEO, another company requesting a voluntary audit. The caller ID showed Goldman Sachs, CEO office. Progress was accelerating. But the most meaningful change was personal. Last month, David's nephew Marcus had started his first job at a tech company, one where his qualifications would be judged fairly from day one. The young man had called David after his first week. "Uncle, I feel like I can actually be myself here, like my ideas matter." Those words meant more than any stock price or legal victory. The conference room's silence was broken by the sound of diverse voices in the hallway. The new Teknova leadership team was arriving for their weekly meeting. Different faces, different perspectives, different backgrounds, but the same commitment to excellence and integrity. David smiled, remembering Richard Sterling's words from that February afternoon. "You're not qualified for this position." He'd been absolutely right. David wasn't qualified to be part of a corrupt system. He was qualified to change it. The transformation was complete, but the work continued. Every day brought new challenges, new companies seeking guidance, new opportunities to build a more equitable corporate America. This story proves that quiet courage can defeat loud prejudice. That preparation triumphs over privilege. That justice, properly applied, creates opportunity for everyone. The live stream that started it all continues to inspire people worldwide. Comments pour in daily from employees who found the courage to speak up, from executives who chose transparency over cover-ups, from young professionals who refuse to accept discrimination as just how things are. Have you witnessed discrimination in your workplace? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience matters, and your voice can inspire change. Every comment helps build a community of accountability. Tag someone who needs to see this story. A colleague facing unfair treatment, a friend navigating corporate bias, a family member starting their career. Share it across your networks. The more people who see this, the faster we can create systemic change. Subscribe for more real-life stories of people who chose courage over comfort, justice over silence, action over acceptance. Hit that notification bell so you never miss stories that matter. Follow the Institute for Corporate Justice on social media for updates on the movement for workplace equity. Join the #corporate accountability discussion happening across platforms. Because the most powerful force in any boardroom isn't wealth or status. It's truth. And truth, once revealed, changes everything.